You are listening to the Intuitive Healing Connection, where intuitive healing connects with everyday living. Hi, my name is Gina Strole, and I am your host. I am best known as the down-to-earth energy healer that doesn't sugarcoat the truth. I walk my clients through the healing process so they can find freedom from their emotional pain, heal from their past, and find peace and joy again. If you are interested in healing your emotional past, tapping into your spiritual side to receive your own answers, finding your own clarity, and discovering your own spiritual truths, then you are in the right place. I am here to lead the way and to help you discover your own intuitive healing connection. Hello, and welcome to the Intuitive Healing Connection. I'm so excited today. I have an amazing guest, and I'm so excited to have MaryAnn Walker with me here today. And I'm going to let her introduce herself really quick before we dive into this awesome podcast, because her and I have so much in common, and I think it's going to be a great conversation today. So welcome, MaryAnn.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, Gina. I have been so looking forward to this conversation. I just love everything that you're putting out into the world. And I think that our audiences have a lot to learn from each other, and there's a lot of overlap. So I'm so excited to be here. And yeah, just by way of introduction, my name is MaryAnn Walker, and I'm the life coach for the helpers, healers, and people pleasers. And so I work a lot with self-care, with relationship issues, with a whole lot of things, which I know that you also address. So I am just really looking forward to today's conversation.
That's so awesome. I know you and I do. We overlap so much in our work, and we have a mutual friend, which is how I found you really, and so it's just been really fun to watch you blossom and grow this last year in your business. And I love your energy. That is one thing that I'm like, oh my gosh, I love your energy. I could like sit here and marinate in your energy forever. So I am so glad
thank
that
you
you
so
agreed.
much.
Yeah, I'm so glad you agreed to be here today, because we do have very similar audiences, and today's going to be an awesome conversation. So to dive
Yeah,
in,
I'm super excited.
I know, to dive in, let's talk about self-care, because let's just start there. I was like, let's just start with that, because today I think we're going to cover a few areas, I think, and it's going to be awesome. So let's just start with self-care, because I hear so many people like, oh my gosh, you just need to do self-care and go get a pedicure and that's good enough. And like, and I kind of giggle. You giggle too, because that's because there's so much more to it than that. So let's just start there. Let's just talk about taking care of ourselves on a much deeper level than this. I mean, that's important. Don't kid me. Like, I love to go get a pedicure as much as anybody does, but let's talk about your definition of self-care. Where do you go with all of that?
Yeah, well, like you, my definition of self-care has really changed a lot over the years, because I used to think the same thing, that, okay, well, I just need to go get a pedicure or take a nap, a hot bath. And my definition has completely changed, where now I think that self-care is really actually identifying your personal needs and fulfilling it. And sometimes that does look like going and get a pedicure. Other times it looks like really digging deep and doing the healing work. And it might not look really pretty on the outside. It might look like really allowing space and creating a safe space for feeling and processing deep emotions. I mean, it can look like so many different things, but I really think it's coming to know yourself well enough to identify, okay, what is my actual need right now? And how can I fill that need, rather than just boxing ourselves in that, oh, I'm going to go get a pedicure and call it self-care. But but really asking yourself those questions. What is it I actually need? Am I needing connection? Am I needing space for healing? Am I needing to be heard? What is it that I actually need? And then taking those steps proactively to really meet those needs is how I would define it.
I absolutely love that. And I agree with you 100%. There's so much more to it. And you're right. Some days it is, I need a pedicure. Some days it's, I need a freaking bag of M&Ms, and I'm going to emotionally eat today, and it's going to be okay, because I understand that this is part of my process. Like, Other days, you're right. It is messy and it's sloppy and it's journaling all day and it's crying all day and it's,
Hmm.
really processing and giving yourself the space to do it and not beating yourself up for being in that space. My gosh. And those, I find with my clients, that's really hard for them to do. That's the days that most of them message me and say,
Yeah.
I'm a hot mess today. Can you fix me? And it's like, no, you'll be better in 24 hours or so. Here's what we're going to do. Like, here's the plan.
Yeah. And that is what I experienced too in my practice, is seeing so many people that they assume that because I'm experiencing a negative emotion, it's bad. Like just make the negative feeling go away. And it's like, no, this is what healing looks like.
Yeah.
Like life is 50-50. You're going to have some hard emotions, and learning how to navigate them is what's going to bring the happiness, because we're actually compounding our negative emotions just by thinking I shouldn't be feeling this.
Well, and I tell my clients too, the moment that you will step into them and say, you know what, it's okay. It's okay for me to
Yeah.
feel this. It's amazing that shift that happens inside of our body in that moment of acceptance. Like that's
Yeah.
the key right there. It's like just allowing yourself to, you know what, I don't have to be, why do we have to be perfect every day? Why does it have to be positive every day? Why do we have
Yeah.
to stay? There's nothing that says that's what we have to do, but we have been taught not to deal with these negative emotions. And heaven forbid we're angry one day, or heaven forbid we're mourning
Yeah.
the loss of whatever it is that we're going through, or a lot of times we mourn the loss of our childhood while we're healing, or mourn the loss of what we thought life was
Hmm.
supposed to be. And we don't allow ourselves to step into that place.
Yeah, I think that was beautifully said, that yeah, it's about just radically accepting that, okay, yeah, like I can experience this grief, I can experience this negative emotion, and I can love myself through it. And for some reason, we have an easier time doing that for other people, right?
Oh
Like
yeah.
if our friend is having a hard time, it's like, oh, I got you. Let me sit with you. Let's cry about it. Let's eat ice cream. We're there for it. But when it's ourselves, then we judge it. And it's like, no, everybody else is allowed to have these emotions except for me. But really coming to just radically accept that, no, like this is what self-love is really showing up for myself through all of it, just like you would your friend.
Absolutely. One of the sayings that I have said many, many times over the course of my work is you've got to learn to become your own best cheerleader. And
Yeah, absolutely.
you have to step into that play. I believe this is just one of the biggest things with doing our work and healing our work and personal development and whatever you want to call it, like,
Yeah.
is really learning to be your own cheerleader and being okay to not be okay. It's okay to not be okay. It's
Yeah.
okay to not feel like you got all your ducks in a row. Like, so what? My ducks are all over the place, and I
Yeah.
appreciate my ducks being all over the place. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And if I met anyone with all their ducks in a row, I'd think, okay, what something must be wrong here, right? Because we have this vision of perfection that no, our ducks should be in a row. And it's like,
yeah,
no, like the ducks are going to do what the ducks are going to do. That's authentic living.
that's exactly right. I love that. I'm like, I love that. That is exactly right because there is no perfectionism is such a false sense of that's just us trying to control the world, and it never works that way. It
Yep.
just is so exhausting to think that it even possibly could work that way.
So true.
So, well, since we're going there, let's talk about perfectionism for a minute.
Yeah.
So, where do you think perfectionism comes from? That's a good, because I hear this a lot. It's like, no, it's just
Yeah.
the way I am. And I'm like, no, let's talk about that for a minute. Because,
Yeah.
so you give me your take on perfectionism, because I'm sure that we're right in the same line. So,
Yeah. Well, I think that for me, like my perfectionistic tendencies came through my fear that I wouldn't be loved and accepted by other people. Like it was about that fear of inadequacy.
yeah.
And I really had to work through that. I really had to dig deep to recognize my own worth and create that internal validation so I wouldn't be so dependent on the external validation. And in fact, like I have a podcast too, and it was interesting to observe myself as I launched it.
Uh-huh.
I didn't tell anybody about it. I pre-recorded 7 episodes before I told anybody anything about it because I knew I didn't want to be negatively impacted by other people's perceptions. I had to gain that evidence for myself that, okay, things are going to get better over time. I'm going to improve over time. I'm going to show up consistently. I knew that I had to work through my perfectionistic tendencies and really kind of embrace essentially B minus work.
Yes.
Then just so, okay, consistency is going to beat out perfectionism every time. But for me, it was really about identifying that, okay, this is really coming through that fear of insecurity and fear of abandonment from others was really what limited me. But what about for you? What's your definition of
Um,
perfectionism and how has it shown up for you?
my gosh, in so many ways. I agree with what you just said. Mine has come through definitely with trying to prove myself to the world. It's
Mm,
like having to prove myself and I tell people all the time too, and just like you're saying with your podcast, to me,
mhm,
owning a business and going out in the social media world, especially
mhm.
talking about spiritualistic, crazy woo-woo garbage that, a lot of people think are just garbage, which I absolutely do not think it's garbage, but or I wouldn't be sitting
Yeah,
here today. But it was really, I'm like you, I had to step out of myself and realize that, you know what, some people weren't going to like it, and that's okay. And
yeah,
but it was going to be okay. And really putting myself out there in the world was tough because I couldn't control what was going to go on the outside.
yeah.
But just like you, I tell people, if you want to test your perfectionism, you know start owning a business, start doing things, start writing emails. I remember the first time I sent an email that had the big old major typo in there, and I about had a freak out because I couldn't take it back, but it was like,
Yeah,
oh, I can't even bring that back, I can't even undo it. And now I'm like, oh well, it's because I've done that work. I've had to sit with myself and realize that, it doesn't matter. Nobody is perfect. Nobody's going to do everything perfect. Not every link is going to work. Not every day is going to be a perfect hair day. And
yeah.
it's okay. Showing up to me is way more important than any of that. So yeah, I hear you. Like,
So true.
and the
Yeah.
podcast is hard because I see my first ones that I recorded and I was like, oh yikes.
Yeah. And it's so true putting yourself out there, especially when you are the face of your business.
Yes.
It is terrifying, right? And it's like, well, what are people going to think? But it's so interesting too that bottom line is people don't want perfection. They want real. They want authentic. And
Authentic.
it's interesting that some of my, content that has taken off the most was just the stuff where I was just being real and it wasn't super polished. It wasn't super clean, but it was honest.
Yep.
And that's what resonates with people. And that just recognizing that helped me so much to just let go of that perfectionism where I was like, you know what? Like if they don't like it, they're not my people. And that's okay.
Exactly. Exactly. That's what I say too. I'm like, I'm not
Yeah.
going to be everybody's cup of tea.
Yeah.
Maybe they're peppermint, I'm spearmint. I don't know,
Yep.
and it's
Yep.
okay. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. I don't want to be everybody's cup of tea, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
Like, I want the people who can really, just like you're saying, I show up authentically too. I just believe
Hmm.
100% in really speaking from the heart, and I share things on social media that probably I I just do because I think I want
Yeah.
people to see that, what, it's not just about living the perfect life. It's about living the messy life and still showing up. It's about going
Oh, I
through hard
love that.
things. It's going through hard things and still
Yeah.
showing up. This last year, since we're going to talk,
Mm,
well, the last 5 months, I don't know if you know, I was in a biking accident back in
mm,
November, and it has
mhm,
been a rough 5 months. I won't
mhm.
lie. Like, but I remember thinking last year, the last 5 months have been messy. We just won't even go there. Like, my business
Yeah.
has been messy. My life feels messy. I completely messed up my knee. And so I went to a doctor to begin with, and he just told me I needed physical therapy and it'd be okay. And that was not the case. There was a ton
Mm,
of damage. So I ended up having surgery after being already down for 2.5 months. Then I went in
mhm,
and had total knee reconstructive surgery, and I've been through all that for these last few months. And so it's been really interesting because my definition of what life looks like has
mm.
completely done a 180 in these last 5 months. What I thought I wanted
Huh.
my business to look like, what I thought I wanted to my life to look like, it's all completely changed. And it's
Huh.
been messy. You want to know those ducks? I don't even know where the damn ducks are. Like, I couldn't even tell
Yeah.
you where my ducks are. I put food out.
Yeah.
There's water. They got a pond.
Yeah.
They're happy. Like, because there is
Yeah.
no such thing as having your ducks in a row. And I've realized that, like, it really just has been a total do-over, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
but I think we go through things like this to realize that, oh my gosh, you know what? It's okay. And I
Yeah.
still showed up. I still did. I just took time off as well, but I still showed up. I still did my business. I still did what I needed to do. And thank God for a team. That's what I'll say, of
Hmm.
people who were there to support us, because it's amazing, um, the changes and things that we go through. And, when we
Yeah.
have these major things happen to us in our lives, and it's okay.
Mm. Yeah, that is so true. And I love how you said it's that life is messy, but we just work through the messy and we keep showing up through the messy. And
Yeah.
when we have those big experiences, like your accident, how much that shifts our perspective about, okay, let me rethink what perfection looks like. Let me rethink what self-care looks like. Let me rethink what authenticity looks like. I mean, even my definition of how would I show up as my 100% self today, because your version of 100% is going to shift so much depending on what's going on in your life. So
Mm-hmm.
that was a beautiful example that kind of combines all of that, the perfectionism, the self-care, all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. This was one time in my life that I really had to get up every day and decide, where do I want to put my energy today? Because
Yeah.
there was only so much to give. So it was like, what do I have today? I have an email. That's it. Okay. We
Yeah.
have an email. That's it. That's more than,
Yeah.
whatever it was for the day. So it's amazing. Yeah. We get these different perspectives in life that are just, I think it's a gift. People are like, how can
Yeah.
you look at this as a gift? I'm like, no, the last 5 months have been a gift. It's been a true gift.
Yeah. Yeah. And even thinking, as you talked about, okay, well, today all I can do is send that email. What a beautiful form of self care to
Yeah.
recognize what is my capacity today. And I'm going to love myself that I showed up and I sent the email. And
Yep.
I'm going to stop guilting myself for all of the other things that I could do when I was at 100%, right? Because my 100% is just different today. And what a gift to yourself, but to really have to learn through that struggle. Oftentimes it does take a struggle for us to learn that.
Yeah.
But yeah, what a beautiful experience.
It happened again yesterday. I'm doing extensive physical therapy, and I came home yesterday
Mm-hmm.
just exhausted from physical therapy. And I was like, oh my gosh, I
Mm.
still had a list of things from work to do. And I was like, you know what? Tomorrow's a new day. It's
Yep.
like,
Yeah.
it will just wait. And I think we have to get to this place in life. Sometimes I think, do we have to go through these hard things to get to that place? I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we do.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need that little readjustment, is what I call it. Like, it's not that I
Mm-hmm.
was doing anything wrong before, but it's like, this has taught me on such a deeper level of how to take care of
Yeah.
myself and what I really want to do every day and how I want to show up and what I want to look like to the world. And it's made me
Yeah.
reconsider so many things. And so, you know, whoever's listening out there, don't think that, it's bad to go through these type of things. I don't think it is. I think it's a gift. And
Yeah. Well, and how much it broadens your own perspective and your own personal level of empathy, and how much that actually improves your gifts as a healer when you have that perspective and that empathy. It really is a gift to have those experiences. And oftentimes we dismiss them. But yeah, I was remembering talking with somebody where they said, yeah, I was listening to this new young bride talk about how the worst day ever was when her washing machine flooded. And she thought, oh, honey, what a blessed life you have if that's the worst day you've ever had. And how it does limit our ability to connect with other people. But it can be hard when we're in the struggle to see the gifts of the struggle. Sometimes we don't see them until hindsight. But to see that, wow, okay, even if the only gift that I have is more empathy for other people that have been through a similar thing, what a beautiful gift.
you're right. I remember when I was younger, and I would think that the day that the washer flooded, or, the
Yeah.
the water heater went out, or those were just terrible days. And now I'm like, we had money to go buy a new one. Who cares?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, we
No,
cleaned up the
yep.
mess, the carpet got cleaned. Hallelujah. It's like, so
Yeah.
it's a different perspective in life for sure. And I I think the older we get, hopefully that perspective changes just a little bit, and we realize that,
Mm-hmm.
what, it's okay. It's just life.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
just life. It's
Yep.
okay to
So
roll
true.
with it. Yeah. So, where should we go next? Let's talk about creating compassion for ourselves, because a lot of people don't. I know in my work, this is one that we have to work a lot on. They've been taught to suck it up, just keep going, just
Yeah.
get over it, put your big girl panties on. I used to say that too a long time ago. I don't say that anymore. I never tell myself to put my big girl panties on.
Yeah.
It's like, no, there's no reason to put any big girl panties on. Like,
Yeah.
it is what it is. So let's talk
Yeah.
about creating compassion for ourselves. How
Yeah.
do you think that happens, or how do we go about working through that? Because to me, it's kind of a mountain. It kind of seems like a mountain for a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think it's similar to what we were talking about before. It's really coming to that place where you can be your own best friend, where you can show up for yourself through that place of compassion, recognizing when you have those thoughts coming in that you should be showing up differently, that life should be any different than it is. And, oftentimes we really should on ourselves a lot, especially through the transitions. And I can't tell you how many times I've been in session with somebody and they've really been shooting on themselves that, but this should be easier and this should be resolved by now. And I'm so upset that I'm still feeling this. And I was like, okay, hold up. Like, this is just what transition looks like.
Yeah.
And just shifting it from, I shouldn't be feeling this way to, oh, maybe this is exactly what healing looks like. Maybe this is exactly what transition looks like. Like, maybe that's okay. It's not going to be this way forever, but maybe this is just what it looks like. And I can just have some love and compassion towards that. That, yeah, after I've been in an accident, I'm not going to be able to do some of the things that I have usually wanted to do, but maybe this is just what recovery looks like.
Right.
But really just loving yourself where you're at. And, oh, isn't that interesting that when I'm going to keep using your accident
I
as an
love that.
example.
Yeah, that's
It's like,
fine.
yeah, I mean, it's just such a beautiful metaphor for any kind of healing. But when
Mhm.
it's like, okay, yeah, like I am not where I want to be right now, but I can love myself where I'm at. I can meet myself exactly where I'm at. I wouldn't have these expectations of anyone else around their healing timeline. So why am I holding myself to a different standard?
Yeah.
Just let it go and recognize, no, like this is just what healing looks like. I think can bring so much self-compassion.
Absolutely. As you're saying that, I'm like, I have actually thought those thoughts during, because I've had so many people go, well, I had an ACL replacement and it wasn't that bad. And I was like, there have been days when I'm
Oh,
just like,
the
oh, I want to
comparisons.
throat punch you. Yeah, it's like the whole comparison. But the ACL wasn't that bad. I don't know why it's taking so long, Gina. And it's like, oh my gosh, well, let's do the ACL, the PCL, the LCL. Let's do all the L's, and then we'll talk about that's
Yeah.
not even the fractures and all the other stuff. So it's been really hard to like accept the fact that this is just going to take a while. Like, it's going to take a
Yeah.
long time. And so as you were saying that, I was like, oh my gosh, I've actually had all those thoughts lately. It's like, why is this
Yeah.
taking so long? But it's reminding myself and coming back to the fact that we don't have to compare ourselves to anybody. I don't have to be
Yeah.
anybody. It's like we just get to be, we just get to do, we just get to show up and do the very best that we can do, and that is it. Like,
Yeah. Well, and it's so interesting because when you are able to like recognize when you are making those comparisons and just acknowledge, oh, I'm comparing right now. It helps us to let go of that judgment because looking at any situation, every person's divorce is different.
yeah,
Every person's parenting experience is different. Everybody's struggle with addiction, either their own or a loved one, is completely different.
different.
And we like to assume that, oh, because my experience was similar, it's the same. But that prevents us from having that compassion and that connection with other people. And so recognizing when we're comparing ourselves to others, or, if we're comparing our situation to somebody else's situation, recognizing like, oh, I can see some things that are similar, but also comparing, but what else is different?
Yeah.
Maybe just your age is different and that's going to impact your recovery from your accident. But
Right.
what things are different? How is this going to be impacting things? Yeah, it's so interesting what we choose to compare and what we choose to ignore when it comes
Mhm.
to our personal healing timelines.
Yeah, absolutely. That is 100% so true. And we do. Yeah. And stepping out of that, I know now as the healer, I'm like, yeah, we can't do this today. That's not okay. Like, you're
Yeah.
you and they're them. And then you get to take your path and they get to take yours. And
Hmm.
whatever that looks like and however that feels like and whatever that seems like, it's all okay. Like, in any
Yeah.
given situation, accidents or not, like, there is no need to compare anywhere, because you're right. No divorce is the same. No things are the same.
Hmm.
We can relate with people when we've been through things like that, but it doesn't mean that ours is
Yeah.
the same as theirs.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure it's similar in your practice, but I know oftentimes I'm asked, yeah, but how long? How long do I have to feel this way? How long do I have to allow these negative emotions? How long
Mhm.
is my situation going to be like this? And it's like, it's just different for everybody,
It
right?
is.
They want to know the magic number of when
Yeah.
it's all going to be okay. It's like, it could be a week, it could be a couple years, but you don't have to worry about it. All you have to do is worry about today. What is your capacity today?
Today.
And recognizing it's going to have up and downs. It's going to come in waves. Some days will be harder than others. Some days will be easier. But all you have to do is just really meet yourself in the present. I think that also limits our self-compassion, is when we're either living in the past, that, oh, thinking, oh, well, it's always been this way and here's all the evidence, or worried that it is always going to be this way and fearing for the future. But just be present with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I know I've had a really hard time. We're headed out of the country. So before I knew that I was having surgery, we went ahead and booked a trip out of the country. And so that's been another thing, here that we're talking about this, because I'm like, oh my gosh, we have a timeline. I have a deadline. I need to be able to walk. So, you're talking about how long is it going to take? I'm like, you know what? Hurry up. We got things to do. Like, but then you have to remember, you know what? It's going to look like, even my husband said to me the other day, Gina, it's going to look like whatever it looks like. Like, just let it be. Just let it be. Like, whatever that looks like, whatever given day looks like, it's going to be fine. Like, and I think we need to remember that in life as well. It's not about these deadlines, and it's just being present. I love how you said that, being present in our body, being present in the moment, being present here, and just allowing ourselves to be, and let go of this future garbage, and let go of the past, and just, it's the here and now. It's right here in those moments.
Yeah. And when we are able to be present with it, that's what helps to expand our psychological flexibility, right? Where we are more adaptable in the moment. But if we're clinging to the past or to the future, we're less flexible. We're less willing to bend with what is, because we haven't accepted what is. And so really, like, expanding that. And all it takes is just practicing that presence.
I love that. You are so right. I want to redirect us for a minute, because I actually had a client reach out to me this morning, and she messaged me, and she asked me how I was doing, and I was great, doing fabulous. How are you? And she said her message to me this morning was so awesome. And I was like, we have to, because it's been on my mind all morning. And I was like, MaryAnn and I are going to talk about this today, because, and she said, my mind is quiet for just a moment. And I was like, oh, I said, isn't it lovely when you get to that place? And she thought, I won't say that it's completely quiet, but it's quieter. And I love it when we get to those places in our life where our mind settles, where I know when I do enough healing work with people, and they're finally able to, like, settle out of the anxiety and settle out of the fears a little bit, like, let some of that go and really settle into our mind. So let's talk a little bit about your feelings on our mind chatter and how that works. Because I know in my practice, I tell people a lot, your mind doesn't speak your truth. Our mind speaks our fears, our mind speaks our traumas, our mind speaks the things that we've been through. And to me, this is really what healing's all about, is really listening to that chatter, and where is it coming from, and learning to quiet the chatter. So what's your take on all of that? Let's talk about you go wherever you want with it, because this is a broader, this one's kind of big, but I was like, we need to talk about this, because I think it's
well, this is my jam, honestly. Like, I do a significant amount of thought work, and I love that you piggybacked this with the presence, because what I really work with people on and coach people on is, we have 60,000 thoughts every single day. They're just everywhere. They are. And so really what I work with people on a significant amount is just slowing down our thoughts enough to identify, okay, pick the one thought. Every single thought that we have is going to create an emotion. And every one of those emotions, that's how we show up in life, is through these emotions. We're very emotional beings. We're showing up through an emotion, be it confidence, insecurity, whatever, but it all stems from our thoughts. And when we have 50 million thoughts happening at the same time, it can make it harder for us to even identify, okay, why am I feeling anxious right now? What is happening for me? But when you're able to slow it down and identify those individual thoughts, then you can really break it down and recognize, okay, the brain is just going to talk. It's like this roommate that won't shut up.
Exactly.
But when you can slow it down and see, oh, isn't that interesting? Like, right now, I'm currently believing that so-and-so just made a crusty face at me. It's like, okay, well, why do I think that? Like, what's coming up for me? Why am I assuming that because they made a face that it means something negative about me? Isn't that interesting? Maybe they smelled something stinky. Maybe they're remembering something horrible that happened at work earlier in the day. Maybe, like, we have no idea what's happening for them. But oftentimes we have all of these thoughts. And of course, if I'm thinking somebody just made a crusty face at me, how am I going to show up? I'm going to be showing up really negatively, kind of guarded and defensive. It's not going to be creating what I want. Whereas if I just think, oh, they made a face, Like I don't have to make it mean anything about me.
Yep.
Then I can show up confidently. I can show up feeling secure. And so it's really just slowing it down. And the more you slow it down, the more you can find what your client talked about, those quiet pockets of
Yeah.
peace.
Yeah.
Where it's like, no, I'm just going to slow it down. I know I have 50 million thoughts happening, and I'm just going to adjust the volume on the ones that aren't serving me and just find that peace and that presence with self.
I love that. I love how you said adjust the volume on the ones that aren't serving me, because that's really where it comes in. I know for me a lot in my work and what I do with people is you know what, let's dissect those thoughts too. We can slow
Yeah.
them down. Let's pick out this one. Let's pull it apart. Is it your
Mm-hmm.
truth? Is it
Yeah.
really your truth? I love how you say, isn't that interesting? Because I say the same dang
Yeah.
thing. I'm like, isn't that interesting? I'm like, I've heard you say that. So, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I say the same thing. Isn't that interesting? Like, and that's what I do with thoughts too. And I, what I say to
Yeah.
my clients too, isn't that interesting that that is a thought that's coming up? Where is that coming from? And is that
Yeah.
really your truth? The answer is
Yeah.
no, it's not. It's not our truth, because it's usually something negative about us. Just like thinking that these
Mm-hmm.
people, you know, why am I feeling that because they looked at me that way, I somehow assume now that it's all about me. Like, this is when we're
Mm-hmm.
going back to those, like, now I'm assuming that that's all about me. That's not okay,
Yeah.
because it wasn't about me. It had nothing to do with me. Who
Yeah.
knows what their day's like? Who knows what they're going through? But I don't have to put it back on myself. But why am I putting it back on myself? And can
Right.
I pull that apart? And can I do
Right.
something about that? Like, seriously.
Yeah. And recognizing that all thoughts are optional, right? So why are we choosing those ones? Because we're going to have these two thought models. You know, I was coaching
Mhm.
somebody recently where it was they were telling me, okay, well, they must think that I'm trying to buy their affections, that I'm manipulative, that I'm doing all these things, but I know that I'm a nice person and a kind person and I'm showing up with generosity and love. And it's like, yeah, you have these two thought models happening at the same time, and you get to pick. You get to pick. And
Mhm.
the reason why we cling is we think, well, they should be thinking nice thoughts about me, and they're not thinking nice thoughts
Yeah.
about me. And
Yeah.
so we hyper focus on that one, but it's like, but I don't even believe anything that they're saying.
No.
So isn't that interesting? I'm focusing on all of those things
Mhm.
instead of just focusing on, look, I am showing up in love and kindness. I gave this gift with no expectation
Yeah.
of anything being returned. Like I'm showing up in genuine love and authenticity and feeling at peace with that, because we're going to have all these thought models,
Mhm.
but all of them are optional. So picking which one do I want to believe on purpose. But like you said, it helps to just unpick those where it's like, I'm believing right now that maybe I am showing up in these manipulative ways. But it's
Mhm.
like, but really, when I think about it, I'm really not. That
They're
wasn't
really
my
not.
motive or intention at all.
Nope. Nope. And people are going to think what they want to think. And so we can
Yep.
choose to worry about, this is more the control. This is more the control
Mm-hmm.
side. We can choose to worry
Mm-hmm.
about what people are going to think or what we think they're going to think. That's what I say. We think
Right.
they're going to think about what we think they're going to think about. Like, but it really has nothing to do with any of that. Like,
Yep. And even if they blatantly said, hey, you're acting really selfishly and manipulative right now, it still is just words. It doesn't make it true. You know, that would just be something, it's words somebody said, and it doesn't mean anything
Mm,
until we have a thought about it. And we could think
absolutely.
anything we want about it. We could think, isn't that interesting that they're so judgmental?
Yes.
Or we could think, what does this mean about me?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love what you said about all our thoughts, because that's it's so true. It's like really stepping into this place of this mindfulness and really learning to choose our thoughts, I think is so important. I know one thing that I do on my phone goes off all day long and it looks like I have
Yeah.
all of these things, but I have reminders on my phones of the things that I want to think about, the things that I'm manifesting in my life, the things that I want to
Mm-hmm.
that I'm all the things literally. Like I think I have a dozen reminders on my phone every day, because in fact one just popped up right as we were talking, because to me it is so important to remind myself to think about the things that I want to think about and really
Yeah.
focus on those things, because we can get caught up in so many stories, we can get caught up in our day, we can, and it doesn't have to stay that way. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I I love our I love talking about the thoughts, because it's so important.
Yeah.
to
And
really,
once you're able to identify them and recognize that they are optional, I think that's the most empowering thing that we can do. It's easy when we aren't in control of our thoughts to assume the victim role because then life is happening to us. We're believing all these stories, all these people are against us. It makes us the victim. But once we're able to identify, I can choose to think whatever I want to think about this. It is so empowering and really helps that victim energy to loosen its grip.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, the being in that victim role is so, I don't know. That is such a hard place to be. I love working with people
Yeah.
though that are in that place. I'm like, oh, let's talk about it, baby, because
Yeah.
we can work through all of that because I don't believe that we're just here and life is just happening to us. And
Mm-hmm.
I I probably in my younger years, I would say I probably did believe that because it was like, oh my gosh, we think that we're so powerless and we're just a little ant, in this whole big
Mm-hmm.
ocean and we're trying to swim in it. But then you realize, for me, it was like as I got older, I realized, you know what, that simply isn't true. Because I get to make choices
Yeah.
and I get to do the things and I get to decide what I'm doing every day and I get to decide how I want to feel and I get to decide who I
Yeah.
want to be around. And there's so many things that I get to decide, and I don't get to choose for other people, but I sure as
Yeah.
heck get to choose for myself, and I'm going to do what
Yeah.
feels really yummy to me. So,
Yeah.
yeah, what's your take on all of that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that that is key. I mean, we all want to step into that role of conscious creator,
Mhm,
right? That life isn't happening to us. We can make whatever we want.
mhm,
And I love how you talked about even the manifestations, right? Where it's like, no, like this is me choosing to be a conscious creator of my life instead of staying in that victim energy and telling myself all the reasons. Well, let me convince you of all the reasons why this